He left me $8 million, and I didn't tell a soul, not even the family who stood around his grave whispering about who would get what. I stayed silent and let the storm come. What time are you watching this first part, where share with us in the comments? Let's connect. Harold died in his sleep. No pain, no warning. 1 minute he was beside me snoring softly, and the next I was holding a hand that had already gone cold. We'd been married for 47 years. He was the kind of man who believed in fixing things, broken fences, leaky faucets, even our children's endless drama. But what he couldn't fix was time. I didn't cry at the funeral. People thought I was numb, that I was in shock. But I wasn't. I was simply observing. My children, Dana and Eric, flew in that morning, still dressed like the trip had been an inconvenience. They hugged me too tightly, whispered things like, "We'll take care of you now, Mom." And then, before Harold's casket had even been lowered, they started circling. Did Dad have a will? Is the house in your name, or both? We should probably sort his accounts before probate, right? I stayed silent, because I already knew something they didn't. Harold had left everything to me. And it wasn't just the house. It was $8 million. He didn't tell them, he told me. 1 week before he died, we sat on the porch with 2 mugs of tea and the sunset melting into the horizon. He looked at me and said, "Evelyn, if something happens to me first, I need you to promise me something." "Of course. Don't tell them. Not right away. You know how they are." I nodded. Because I did know. Eric with his get-rich-quick schemes. Dana with her picture-perfect Instagram life and constant credit card debt. Let them show you who they are when they think you have nothing, he said. Then decide if they deserve anything at all. The lawyer confirmed it quietly. "Everything is in your name, Evelyn," she said. She slid the folder across the desk. 8 million, diversified accounts, properties, stocks. Harold had never even mentioned. He had been preparing for decades privately. "Do you want me to inform the family?" "No," I said. "Not yet." And just like that, the game began. They returned to my house like scavengers. Dana came first. Took over the guest bedroom just for a few weeks. She brought her dog, her treadmill, her attitude. "You shouldn't be alone right now," she said. But what she really meant was, "I need to be here, in case you slip, in case you sign something, in case there's something to inherit." Eric started making calls on my behalf. He called the insurance company, the lawyer's office, the credit union, each time pretending I'd asked him to. One day I caught him rummaging through Harold's desk, just organizing some of Dad's old stuff, he said. But his eyes darted too quickly. His hands froze when I stepped into the room. He wasn't looking for memories. He was looking for money. I endured the comments. "You'll probably need to sell the house, Mom. It's too big. You don't really understand taxes, let me help. Dad always said he wanted us to be taken care of." I'm sure that's what he meant. They assumed I was fragile, vulnerable, easy to manipulate. They saw a grieving widow with graying hair and quiet eyes. What they didn't see, what they never saw, was the woman beneath the silence. The one who had listened to their lies for years, paid off their debts, cleaned up their messes, and never once asked for anything in return. I started taking notes, every comment, every look, every plan made behind my back. I kept a journal tucked beneath the floorboard. June 5th, Dana asked again about the car title, wants to rehome it. June 8th, Eric talked to realtor, thinks house can sell fast and high, didn't ask me once. June 12th, found printout of life insurance policy in kitchen drawer. Not mine, Harold's. They were preparing for a life without me, and I was still making them breakfast. But silence is not weakness. Silence is a waiting room, a sharpening stone, a place where women like me go not to disappear, but to prepare. And while they made plans to divide the imaginary fortune they thought they'd soon own, I made my own. Started moving the money, quietly. I hired a second lawyer, opened a trust, split the assets between charities Harold and I both loved, established scholarship funds, hospice endowments, a food program for single mothers, all untraceable to them, all legal, all final. I made sure that even if they tore my house down brick by brick, they would walk away with nothing but dust. I kept making tea, kept knitting, smiling, listening. "You're doing so well," Mom Dana said. "I'm proud of how you're holding it together," Eric added. They had no idea I was holding them together, that I was the only reason the house hadn't exploded with truth. Not yet. Because first, I wanted them to show me everything. The calls from extended family started next. Apparently, Dana and Eric had started whispering. "Mom's not doing well. She's confused, doesn't know how to handle finances. We're thinking about helping her get into a place with more care." The narrative was forming. They weren't just positioning for money. They were laying the groundwork to take my voice away, to declare me incompetent, to become my legal guardians, to seize control before I could fight back. What they didn't realize was I was already 10 steps ahead. I went to Harold's grave. It was quiet, just me and the breeze. "They've started circling Harold," I whispered. "But I'm not scared. You left me enough to survive. Now I'll make sure they don't destroy everything we built." I didn't cry, not because I didn't miss him, but because I finally understood the gift he'd given me: silence, control, and the power to decide who gets to stay and who doesn't. They thought they were being subtle, that their whispers didn't echo, that their scheming wasn't obvious. But I heard it all. And the more I listened, the more a fire began to build, not loud yet, but smoldering, waiting. Dana changed, and not in a good way. She started taking over parts of the house, not helping, occupying. She claimed the upstairs bathroom as hers, started storing her clothes in Harold's old dresser, and even hung up some of her own photos in the hallway, replacing the ones of Harold and me. "It's just for now," she said. "Until we figure out what's next. Figure out what's next." I thought, "You're standing in it. This is my home, my next. And you're acting like it's already yours." Eric wasn't any better. He visited less. But when he did, he brought advisors. A financial planner, a real estate agent, a lawyer he called his friend from undergrad. Each one would look at me with that same patronizing smile. "We just want to make sure you're set up for the long term, Mrs. Grant." Translation: "We want access, we want numbers, we want control." I gave them none of it. But every visit left me tighter in the chest, as if they were slowly shrinking the space I called mine. The conversations turned colder one morning over eggs and toast. Dana said, "Mom, have you thought about downsizing?" I looked up. "Why, I mean, this house is a lot to manage, and you're not getting younger." "Neither are you," I replied. She blinked, then smiled tight-lipped. "I just mean we could help you transition. You could live somewhere with support. Eric and I could handle the estate." Handle the estate. They weren't even pretending anymore. I felt surrounded. The mail was filled with brochures for senior homes. My phone pinged with reminders I didn't set. And every day, another stranger showed up at my door. Insurance agents, charity solicitors, even one man who claimed to be from a legacy preparation service. Eric had clearly given out my name and number. Dana, meanwhile, had started organizing my kitchen, replacing old plates with easier-to-manage versions, rearranging drawers so I'd stop straining my back. It wasn't kindness. It was an erasure, one dish at a time. One dish. They spoke about me like I wasn't there. I overheard a call between Dana and Eric while she thought I was napping. "She's not going to last much longer in that house. We need to be proactive before she gets forgetful. I'm doing all the emotional labor here. You just show up once a week. We'll divide everything after it's official." I stood in the hallway frozen. No mention of love, no worry about my grief. Just strategy, a plan, for my life, without me in it. And yet I made tea. I smiled. I nodded. Because I wasn't done watching. I wanted to see how far they'd go. The first slip came from Dana. One day she accidentally left her tablet unlocked. I glanced at it while folding laundry. There was a list, titled "Mom's Assets Estimated." It included the house value, assumed life insurance payout, furniture appraisal, jewelry estimate, unknown accounts, final line, total potential, 2M plus baseline. I stared at that word for a long time, Not just because it was greedy, but because it was so wrong. If she thought that was the full amount, she had no idea what I was actually worth. And that gave me a kind of strength I hadn't felt in weeks. Then came the push. Dana sat me down in the living room. Eric and I have been talking. Dangerous sentence. We think it's time to get things in writing. In case something happens to you, we need to know what to do. I said nothing. She continued. We'd like you to name one of us power of attorney, just to keep everything simple. We've even drafted the form. She handed me a neatly printed document. I read it, every word, slowly. You want control of my financial and medical decisions, I said. She smiled. It's just a precaution. No, I said softly. Excuse me. No. You don't get to plan my funeral while I'm still pouring your coffee. She didn't like that. That night I heard her on the phone again. She's being irrational. Eric, we might need to talk to a doctor, start documenting forgetfulness. And just like that, they escalated. Eric followed through. He brought a psychiatrist to the house under the guise of a wellness check. The doctor asked me a series of questions. Very kind, very polite. I answered all of them clearly, intelligently. He left looking uncomfortable. Eric was less subtle. We just want to make sure you're okay, Mom. And if you're not, it's better to catch things early. I nodded. I am okay, I said. But you're slipping. He didn't understand. Not yet. I began locking doors, they noticed. They didn't like it. Dana asked for the new keys. I told her I'd lost the spare. Eric tried to reset the Wi-Fi to install his smart devices. I had the password changed and the router hidden. They began to grow. Impatient. What are you hiding? Dana asked. I smiled. Nothing you haven't already tried to take. I withdrew further from them, from their plans, from their games. I stopped cooking their meals, let them fend for themselves. I spent more time in the garden, in the library, with Harold's old journals, and less time explaining myself. Let them wonder, let them boil. Then came the breaking point. One evening I returned from the grocery store to find Eric in the study, Harold's study, where I kept my financial folders, my documents, my trust plans. He had gloves on, a USB drive sticking from my desktop. What are you doing? I asked. He froze. Then stammered I was just looking for Dad's pension info. It's been closed for over a year. He said nothing. I stepped forward. Get out of this room and get out of this house. He tried to talk. I pointed to the door. Now. And he left. Not just the study, the house. Dana followed the next day. She screamed, cried, accused me of driving the family apart. We were trying to help you, she sobbed. We're the only ones you have left, I whispered. No. You left a long time ago, when you stopped seeing me as your mother. They pushed, I endured, they planned, I observed. And now, I had everything I needed, because the more they tried to take control, the more they revealed their own unraveling. And soon, I wouldn't need to say a word. They were going to destroy themselves. All I had to do was watch. Bitterness doesn't scream. It simmers. It's not the first slap, it's the ache that lingers long after the room is silent. And in my silence, I felt it pooling in the corners of my soul, the aftertaste of betrayal. The house was quiet again. After Dana and Eric left, stormed out, really it was almost peaceful. No more passive-aggressive comments over breakfast. No more questions about Harold's investments or veiled suggestions about simplifying the estate. Just the sound of my own footsteps and the occasional creak of the wood floors Harold used to patch up himself. But peace didn't mean healing, because something had changed in me, not just disappointment, but disgust. I used to think bitterness was a flaw, that if you carried it too long, it would rot you from the inside out. But now I realized bitterness could be clarifying. It stripped away illusions. It showed me people for who they really were. And it made every smile I gave them for years feel like a betrayal of myself. Dana posted about me, not directly. Of course not, but on social media. Caring for an aging parent is one of the hardest things I've done, especially when they refuse help and push everyone away. If you know, you know. The comments poured in. Stay strong. She's lucky to have you. It's so hard watching them slip. Watching me slip, I wasn't slipping. They were the ones falling, and they were trying to drag me down with them. Eric sent an email. It was polite, formal. Dear Mom, I understand tensions have been high. I'm willing to meet and discuss how to move forward amicably, ideally with a mediator present. Let's not allow misunderstandings to ruin what's left of our relationship. He signed it, warmly, Eric, warmly. As if he hadn't broken into my study, as if he hadn't tried to siphon my documents onto a USB drive. There was nothing warm left between us, only the ashes of a bond he helped burn. Bitterness made me reread old letters. Letters Harold had written me when we were first married, when money was tight and dreams were big. In one he wrote, "If we ever become rich, let's not let it change us. Let's remember we built this from trust, not greed." I wept. Not because we forgot, but because our children never learned. We gave them comfort. They learned entitlement. We gave them support. They learned control. We gave them love. And they turned it into leverage. I got a call from Dana's husband, Michael. We hadn't spoken in over a year. He was the kind who let Dana take the lead and kept quiet no matter how wrong she was. "Evelyn," he started. I'm sorry to call like this, but things are bad." What kind of things? Dana's maxed out 4 credit cards. She was counting on a different financial situation after Harold passed. She was counting on me, I said flatly. Silence. Yes. Well, she shouldn't have. He sighed. She's not well, Evelyn. She's drinking more, spending more. She feels like you abandoned her. I let the silence settle, because for the first time I understood they hadn't just tried to take from me. They built their lives around the belief that I was theirs to take from. And when I stopped being the well, they started to drown. I began hearing things from neighbors, church acquaintances, even Harold's old poker buddies. "Your son was asking about selling the house. Dana said you were in assisted living. Someone said you were diagnosed with something. Is that true?" They weren't just rewriting the narrative. They were trying to erase me entirely, make me a story about decline, about incompetence. So when the world asked why they had taken over my accounts, my home, my name, it would all make sense. They forgot who raised them. They forgot that I was the one who stayed up with them through chickenpox and fevers, that I worked part-time jobs while Harold built the business, that I packed their lunches, sewed their costumes, stayed up all night worrying while they partied through college. And now I was a hurdle, a problem, a placeholder for the inheritance they thought was overdue. They didn't just want what Harold left behind. They wanted what I hadn't even let go of yet. The bitterness made me act, not irrationally, not out of spite, but with purpose. I updated the will. Not just the distributions, the letter, the one I instructed my lawyer to read aloud at the time of my passing. I made sure it wasn't cold, but it was honest, to Dana and Eric. "You have taken much from me, peace, trust, and the benefit of the doubt. But you have not taken everything, because what remains, I choose to give only to those who gave back something priceless, respect. You taught me something in my final years, that silence is not weakness, and that blood is not always family." A final, quiet bitterness, the voicemail. Late one night, my phone buzzed. Dana, her voice slurred, said, "Mom, I don't know what happened. You used to be warm, soft. You used to love us. Now you're just stone." What did we do? I saved it. Because that was the moment I knew she didn't even understand. And if you can't see your betrayal, you don't deserve forgiveness. Eric's business collapsed. A neighbor mentioned it in passing. Something about poor investments, overextended credit, desperate attempts to borrow against collateral he didn't have. I didn't ask for details, but I made a note. They were unraveling, all by themselves, and I was watching, just like Harold told me to. The mail brought another surprise, a letter, no return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Dana, just a single sentence. "If there's anything left of the mother I knew, please call me." I folded the paper, placed it in a drawer, and didn't respond. Because the mother she knew was never hers to own. Bitterness is quiet. It doesn't demand revenge. It simply refuses to forget. And as I watched my children crumble under the weight of their own greed, I finally understood what Harold meant when he said, "Let them show you who they are when they think you have nothing." They did. And now all that was left was for me to show them who I am. I used to speak gently, warn softly, forgive quickly, but not anymore. Now I sit, I listen, and I watch, because sometimes the greatest justice is simply letting the truth unfold. I stopped answering their calls. Dana tried every few days. Eric less often but more desperate. Blocked numbers, private numbers, even messages from mutual friends. "Your kids are worried about you," a neighbor said. "They say you've shut them out." I smiled. Worried. That's a new tactic. Because it wasn't worry they felt. It was panic. They were realizing their plans had failed, that their golden goose wasn't laying any more eggs. And the silence. That was the sound of the inheritance slipping away. I began attending community events again. Quietly, I volunteered at the library, helped sort books, read stories to children. No one there asked me about my estate. No one tried to move into my home. They called me Miss Evelyn and brought me tea with lemon. It was the first time in months I felt like a person, not a possession. And with every day that passed, I realized the world was full of people who could see me, even if my own children refused to. I hired a security system, discreet, quiet, efficient, not because I feared harm, but because I knew desperation, and desperation makes people bold. The system texted me whenever someone approached the house, facial recognition, motion sensors, audio logs. One day Dana stood outside for 10 minutes. She didn't knock, just stood there, pacing, talking to herself. The camera picked up fragments. She's lying. There has to be more. Maybe if we go legal again, she can't just erase us, but I could, and I had. Eric's spiral got worse. I watched his bankruptcy proceedings online, public records, filed under pressure, business debts exceeding $800,000, assets frozen, lawsuits pending. At one point, I saw his name trending on a local business forum. Scammer, overpromised, underdelivered. Family money dried up, now he's ghosting. I didn't comment, didn't share, just watched. Because watching was enough. He was destroying himself, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. Dana's downfall came next. Her landlord posted an eviction notice on social media. Unpaid rent, 4 months overdue. Her curated Instagram went quiet. No more yoga in luxury studios. No more flat lays of expensive skincare. She posted one cryptic story: "When your own mother cuts you off and lets the world bury you, don't forget it." I screenshotted it, not because it hurt, but because I wanted a record of her rewriting the narrative, playing victim in a story she created. I received a letter from Eric's ex-wife unexpected. "Mrs. Grant, I know we've never been close, but I wanted to thank you. Eric told me years ago that he expected a massive inheritance from you and Harold. He even offered it as collateral in our divorce negotiations. Now I know. You saw through him. I just wanted to say thank you for not letting him win." I cried when I read that, not out of sadness, but because someone finally understood that letting them fall wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. I started mailing small checks, not to Dana, not to Eric, to single mothers in the community, elderly women who'd lost spouses, teen girls starting college. Each envelope said only, "From someone who knows what it feels like to be taken for granted." I didn't want recognition. I wanted impact, something my children had never truly cared about. They wanted wealth that looked good on paper. I wanted wealth that meant something. Then came the turning point. Dana filed a formal complaint for elder exploitation, claimed I was being manipulated by outside parties, said she had concerns about my mental health and financial judgment. She asked the court to assign her as my legal guardian. When the papers arrived, I smiled, because finally the mask was off. She wasn't begging anymore. She was declaring war, and she didn't know I had already won. I prepared my counter. My lawyer filed a response backed with medical evaluations from 2 doctors confirming I was mentally sound. Financial records showing clear independent decision-making. Testimonies from the community leaders I'd volunteered with. But the final blow, a notarized video Harold had made. He spoke directly to the camera. If Evelyn's ever challenged, know this, everything I left her was intentional. She is the most capable person I've ever known. And if anyone claims otherwise, they never knew her at all. We submitted it. Dana withdrew her petition a week later. No apology, no explanation, just silence. Eric showed up at my door, unshaven, hollow-eyed, defeated. He held an envelope. This is everything I took from Dad's office. I shouldn't have. I was wrong. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask for money. He just placed it on the doorstep and walked away. I didn't open it, didn't need to, because the act itself said everything. I kept watching not to gloat, but to understand. Understand how 2 people I gave everything to could fall apart the moment I stopped being their safety net. And in that understanding I found something strange. Not joy, not anger, but closure. I sat in Harold's chair one evening, fireplace crackling. Letters from charities on the table. New thank you notes from students. Updates from shelters I'd helped. And I whispered, "They're tearing themselves apart, Harold." You were right. I imagined him smiling. The same smile he had when he beat the kids at Monopoly. And I realized I didn't need to expose them. They did it themselves. You don't always need revenge. Sometimes you just need patience. Let the liars talk. Let the greedy take. Let the selfish scheme. Because in time, they show the world exactly who they are. And when that moment comes, you don't need to raise your voice. Just raise your eyebrow and watch. You can only stay silent for so long. Then comes the moment when silence isn't grace, it's fuel, and the truth. The truth is like fire. Once it's lit, it doesn't stop until everything false burns to ash. It began with an invitation. My 73rd birthday was coming up. Dana had the idea of throwing a small family dinner. I almost laughed. But I said yes, not because I wanted to see them, but because it was time. Time for them to hear what I had known for 2 years. Time for them to realize just how wrong they were, and how deep my silence had gone. They came dressed for a party, Dana in pearls, Eric in a blazer he couldn't afford. Both brought gifts cheap but flashy. The kind you give when you're trying to say, "See, we're good people." I made tea, served Harold's favorite lemon cake. We ate in awkward politeness, but I could see the flicker in their eyes. They were wondering why I'd said yes. Why now? Why them? After dessert, I stood. "I'd like to share something with you both," I said. Dana's smile tightened. Eric sat straighter. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside, notarized documents, letters, pictures, bank statements, trust declarations, deeds. I handed it to Eric. "What's this?" he asked. The truth, I said, about what Harold left me, and what I did with it. They opened it together. At first confusion, then silence. The kind that only comes before an earthquake. $8 million, fully documented, redirected to trusts, charities, scholarships, end-of-life care programs, none of it in their names, not a cent. This is a joke, right?" Dana whispered. "No. You gave it all away. I gave it where it mattered. We're your children. Were you acting like it?" Eric stood up, shaking. "You lied to us." "No," I said. "I said nothing. You assumed everything. We had plans, I know. I read your emails. You spied on us. You plotted to take everything I had while I was still breathing. You forged documents. Tried to declare me mentally unfit. You walked through this house like you owned it. You tried to rewrite my life." Dana was crying now. "You don't understand how hard it's been. We thought we'd be okay after Dad died. We thought we'd have something to hold on to." "You did," I said. "What you had me." And the room fell quiet. Because in that moment they realized it. They hadn't just lost the money. They had lost me. I pulled out the final letter. One Harold wrote. "To our children, If you're reading this, it means you chose greed over grace. You saw your mother's silence and thought it meant weakness. You were wrong. She is the strongest person I have ever known. And if you stood by her truly, this wealth would have been yours to share. But you didn't. And now you must live with what you chose. Not because we didn't love you, but because we wanted to see who you'd become when no one was watching. Dana was sobbing. Eric stared at the wall like he was trying to disappear into it. I stood calm as ever. I'm not angry, I said. I'm done. You can't just cut us off, Eric said. But I didn't, I replied. You cut yourselves off. You saw me grieving and saw a bank account. You saw a widow and saw weakness. You saw your mother and thought you saw a mark. I was your son, Eric shouted. Then act like it. Dana tried one last plea. But Mom, what happens to us now? That's up to you. You can choose to heal or to hate. You can start again or keep burning down the bridges behind you. But either way, you'll walk alone. Because this door. I looked around the room. It's closed. They left with the documents. No hugs, no goodbyes. Just a silence louder than anything I'd ever heard. And when the door clicked shut, I felt something crack inside me. Not pain, not relief, just finality. The kind that only comes after truth is no longer hiding. I walked through the house. Every room felt lighter, brighter, as if Harold was there, nodding in approval. I touched the frame of our wedding photo. They know now, I whispered. And I didn't have to scream to be heard. I didn't seek revenge. I sought clarity. And in that clarity, I found peace. Let them rage. Let them spin their stories. Let them blame the storm. But I know the truth. They didn't lose a fortune. They lost a mother. And now there was only one part left. The quiet after the fire. There's a moment after the storm has passed when everything is still. The damage is done. The truth is out. And all that remains is silence. But this time the silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning, full of peace, full of choices finally mine alone to make. The house is quiet again, not because someone left, but because I asked them to. The air feels different now, not tense, not heavy, just calm, like the sigh after a long-held breath. I pour myself a cup of tea, Harold's favorite blend. Sit by the window where the sun hits just right. And for the first time in years, I feel like the house belongs to me again. The phone still rings. Dana called once last week. I didn't answer. Then Eric. Then silence again. Sometimes I wonder what they'd say if I picked up. Apologies, accusations, or just more desperation dressed up as concern. But I don't wonder for long, because I don't need to know. I'm no longer waiting for their voices to validate mine. I spend my days differently now. I walk to the library every Tuesday. Volunteer at the local garden every Thursday. Help young mothers at the shelter fill out job applications on Saturdays. They don't ask me what I have in the bank. They don't care about my trust funds or my estate. They care that I show up, that I bring homemade muffins, that I remember their names. And in their eyes, I see something I hadn't seen in my children in a long, long time: gratitude. One letter changed everything. It came in a small envelope. No return address, but the handwriting was Dana's. I'm sorry, not for the money, not even for the assumptions. I'm sorry for seeing you as a stepping stone. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know. I remember who you were, and I miss her. I didn't respond, but I kept the letter. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. Sometimes they only learn after it's too late. I watched Eric on the news, not for scandal, but for something new. He was working with a nonprofit now, helping ex-convicts find employment. His face had changed, less smug, more tired, but also more real. Did he still blame me, maybe? But part of me thinks he finally found something more meaningful than a balance sheet. The garden is blooming. Roses, violets, marigolds, just like Harold loved. I sit there every morning, sometimes in silence, sometimes humming old songs. The neighbors wave, kids ride bikes past me, and every now and then someone stops and says, "It's so peaceful here." I nod, because it is. It took loss, betrayal, grief, but this little corner of the world is finally mine again. I dream differently now, not of Harold dying, not of my children arguing, not of courtrooms or bank statements. I dream of quiet mornings, of tea in hand, of warm sun, of laughter not loud or forced, but real. I dream of freedom, not just from my family's expectations, but from the fear of being alone, because I'm not. I have memories, purpose, myself, and that's enough. I visited Harold's grave one last time. I brought flowers, his favorite peonies, sat in the grass, took a deep breath. They know everything now, I whispered, and they lost everything they thought they deserved. I looked up at the sky, but I didn't lose a thing, because what I still had was the ability to choose peace over chaos, silence over conflict, dignity over drama, and above all, I had the satisfaction of staying true to myself. People ask if I regret it, giving away the money, watching them fall apart, letting them go. My answer is always the same. You can't regret giving people the chance to show you who they really are, because now I know, not just who they are, but who I am when I stop shrinking. A final word to those who felt what I felt: if you've ever been used, underestimated, seen as weak just because you were kind, I want you to hear this. Your silence is not a void, it's a mirror, and one day they will see themselves in it, and they won't like what they see, but you will be free. I once kept quiet about $8 million, let my family circle like vultures, watched them betray me, abandon me, lie to me, and I said nothing. Not because I was weak, but because I knew truth doesn't need volume, it just needs time. Now I don't need money to feel worthy. I don't need family to feel whole. All I need is a soft chair, a warm cup of tea, and the quiet knowledge that I chose peace over pain, and won. What time is it where you are? Where are you watching this final part from? Let's share this quiet moment together in the comments. And if you've ever been written off, overlooked, or treated like less in your own family, tell us your story. Maybe your silence has power too.